Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Baltany Bubbleback reference S184029. This watch is available from Octopus Kraken Ali store on AliExpress for €224. The watch is available in two dial colour options, black and blue. So firstly, let's look at the travel case that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes in this Baltany branded hardshell travel case, which is very aesthetically pleasing. I'll show you the interior. As you can see, both halves of the hardshell travel case are lined with two foam panels, which does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. So I like this hardshell travel case. It makes a refreshing change from plastic or cardboard watch boxes one usually gets in the low tier, and I think this is a better option. So with regards to the other items, this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams, and the instructions are in English. They detail the operation of the movement use, which is the Seiko NH38 automatic. One also gets this plastic guarantee card, and I'm pleased to report it is filled in with the date of purchase and stamped by Baltany Watches to activate the warranty. The watch is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is very good because usually in the low tier, this is a low tier piece costing €224. One would only expect a 12-month international warranty, so to get a 2-year international warranty is very impressive. And lastly, one also gets this Baltany branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth, irrespective of the price point of a piece. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Baltany Bubbleback reference S184029. The watch is clearly an homage to the Rolex Bubbleback, which was made from 1933 to 1955 and then discontinued. So, very similar proportions to the vintage Rolex Bubbleback. We have a 36mm case diameter. We have a 44mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 13.6mm, and a lug width of 18mm. The genuine leather strap tapers from 18mm at the lugs down to the stainless steel buckle and tang. Nice heavy gauge of metal to the 316L grade stainless steel buckle and tang, brushed satin finish throughout, no sharp edges, no burrs. However, I would prefer to see Baltany engrave it with a brand logo or alternatively a brand emblem, because I think that would enhance the buckle and tang on the strap. Two leather keepers, one's fixed, one slides as one would expect, and as you can see, very aesthetically pleasing contrasting white stitching at the buckle and tang end, and also at the spring bar end we've got contrasting white stitching. I'll show you the underside. As you can see, it's embossed with genuine leather, plenty of holes in the strap to allow for fine tuning the length. But however, I would like to see Baltany change the use of conventional spring bars and use quick release spring bars, because that would mean that one doesn't need a spring bar tool in order to change the strap. It's a very tight fit to get a spring bar tool in between this thick leather strap and the internals of the lugs in order to change the strap, and if it had a stainless steel quick release spring bar, that would make it much easier to change the strap without damaging the lugs to the case. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a top hat box style crystal which is double domed, as you can see, and it has clear AR coating on the underside. The clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the mirror polished silver handset. Now, contemporary Rolex watches, and this is an homage to the Rolex Bubbleback, they have Mercedes handsets. So we have a pencil handset usually for the minute hand and then a Mercedes hour hand. But the Bubbleback predated the use of that pencil minute hand, and this was the style of handsets Rolex were using between 1933 and 1955. So as you can see, the minute hand is enlarged in proportion, and it is sword profile rather than being pencil profile. So the legibility is excellent. Personally, I think it would look better if the handset were gilt rather than being silver mirror polished, because I think the gilt handset would better complement the patina C3 Superluminova on the printed indices. But however, this is subjective. Some collectors will like the silver mirror polished handset because it does contrast very well with the matte black dial and the C3 patina lume. The legibility is outstanding, no date complication, and the symmetry is as per the Rolex Submariner dial layout, so excellent symmetry to the 9, 6 and 3 rectangular indices, which are printed to a high standard. The second hand is mirror polished silver to a high standard, it's needle shape, and we have 60-minute ticks around the chapter ring, and the minute hand, the second hand and the minute hand extend fully to the minute tick. So the proportions of the handset are perfect. One thing I like about the dial is it's not over-branded with unnecessary text and specification. We simply have Baltany at 12 o'clock, automatic at 6, and then we have 660 feet equals 200 metres, so just the right amount of information. The mirror polished bezel is solid stainless steel, finished to a very high standard, and I like the projection of the top hat boxed crystal, which projects above the edge of the beveled mirror polished bezel. Very aesthetically pleasing, high polished finish to it, which contrasts very well with the brushed satin finish tops of the lugs. The flanks to the case are also mirror polished to a very high standard, as you can see. Absolutely gorgeous to look at. And they also complement the mirror polished bubbleback case back. So the name of the bubbleback, as the name suggests, comes from the case back because it has a bubbleback profile to it. Perfectly smooth and flat against the wrist, and it's mirror polished, completely sterile, so it's incredibly comfortable to wear this piece against the wrist for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. So the bubbleback case back really is very well done. Coin edge finish to the circumference of it, and it's just absolutely beautiful to look at. They've done a very good job of replicating the Rolex bubbleback case back. With regards to the crown, it's coin edge finished, solid stainless steel made from 316L grade, mirror polished domed cap. It's sterile and unsigned. Again, I would prefer to see it signed with a Baltany brand emblem, but bearing in mind this is an homage to the Rolex bubbleback, it is acceptable on an homage to a vintage piece like this to have a sterile case back and a sterile crown. It does capture the essence of a 1933 to 1955 piece. So, I can't give you a wrist shot unfortunately because the leather strap is just a fraction too short, as you can see, which I'll just show you. I just can't engage the tang and the buckle in the last hole, so that's something to consider. This will fit you if you're a collector with a 6 to 7 inch wrist, but if you have a 7.5 inch or above wrist, you're going to need to change the strap for a slightly longer one. If this were just an inch longer, it would fit my 8 inch wrist, so that's something to consider. But as it's a 36mm, of course it's best suited to collectors with a smaller wrist. So I'll hold it on wrist to give you a wrist shot, and then you can see the fit. So 36mm, it's got very low profile proportions. Bear in mind it's a bubbleback case back, and it also has a top hat boxed crystal. It's only 13.6mm, so despite being a bubbleback piece, it will easily slip underneath the shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. Very aesthetically pleasing with the mirror polished handset. The legibility is outstanding. The clear AR coating on the underside of the sapphire crystal works very well. And I love the way the top hat crystal projects above the mirror polished bezel and catches the light. It's just absolutely gorgeous to look at. Mirror polishing to the flanks is absolutely beautiful to look at. It complements the mirror polishing to the bezel. So 18mm lug width is the correct lug width for a 36mm head of the piece. It really does balance it very well. Incredibly lightweight piece on the leather strap. It's only 69 grams. So it feels weightless. It feels absolutely invisible on wrist. So if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you'll appreciate the lack of heft because it means comfort. It doesn't feel top heavy. It feels very well balanced. The proportions of the lugs at 18mm very well balances the 36mm head of the piece. Relatively short lug to lug measurement of 44mm, so it is a snug fit to the wrist, but really I would say it's undersized. If you're a collector with a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you're going to find the lug to lug measurement to be too short. I consider 48mm to be the sweet spot for the perfect lug to lug measurement regardless of wrist size. At 44 it really is best suited to a collector with a 6 to 7 inch wrist, so that's something to bear in mind. It's really a piece for collectors with a smaller wrist rather than larger. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as this uses C3 Super Lume Nova, I've got very high expectations of the performance because on the previous Baltany watches I've reviewed, I've been very impressed with the quality of the C3 Super Lume Nova they use. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This is outstanding. 10 out of 10 C3 Super Lume Nova performance. This really is top grade. Clearly 5 to 6 layers on the printed applied indices and also on the bubbleback handset. The Mercedes hands for the hour hand is nicely proportioned. As you can see, it reaches the rectangular indexes at 9 o'clock and also it will reach 6 and 3 respectively. The large sword hand gives better legibility than a pencil hand would do, so this bubbleback handset really does work very well. It looks good in daylight conditions with the patina lume, but as you can see in the dark the performance is outstanding. and I think they've done an excellent job. 5 to 6 layers of application, good proportions to the Mercedes hour hand, good proportions to the Sword minute hand, and it's very good to look at. The proportions of the applied indices are very good as well. They're slightly smaller than a Rolex Maxi dial in terms of the size of the printed indices, but they're just right. I think they've got the handset proportions and the printed indices proportions done very well, and as you can see, it's glowing incredibly brightly, and it will continue to glow for a good length of time. This is top grade C3 Super Lume Nova, and I'm really pleased to see they haven't cut any corners. Right, so let's discuss the movement used, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. You'll all be familiar with this Seiko NH38 automatic. The NH38 is the no-date version of the NH35A automatic. The only difference between the architecture of the movements is the absence of the date wheel. The rest of the movement is the same. So the NH38 is a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. It has 24 joules. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. Hand winding and hacking, which use for complications. And the stated accuracy is -20 to +40 seconds per day. So a rather wide accuracy range. However, this one has been well regulated and it's running consistently at +7 seconds per day, which is perfectly acceptable for an NH38. Right, so let's test the screw down crown execution. As you can see, coin edge finished, mirror polished domed cap. Absolutely silky smooth. It feels very good to unscrew it. Nice firm resistance to it, which is the friction of the O-ring inside the screw down crown and the friction of the second O-ring inside the stainless steel crown tube, but the thread action is very good. They mesh very well. So, as this is an NH38 without a date wheel, there's no date complication. There is only one click position, so when one unscrews it, one can manually wind it to top it up to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up. The coin edge finishing is very grippy and tactile. Although it's quite small in proportion, it's easy to get purchase on it with one's index finger and thumb. So it's an absolute pleasure to manually wind it. So pulling it out to the first click position is the final click position, and that's the time setting position. Nice firm resistance to the gearing. It feels smooth, no back play, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. The NH38 feels exactly the same as the NH35A automatic, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's used in many watches. Very good. I really like the NH38. And Baltany deserve full credit because they've chosen to use the NH38 rather than the NH35A, which would mean having a phantom date setting position. There would be 2 clicks on the crown. I like to see low-tier brands using the correct movement. If it doesn't have a date complication, a date window, they should use the NH38 rather than the 35A. It has hacking, as you can see. I've now hacked the second hand, so one can stop the second hand dead to set the time precisely to the second. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. So let's test screwing it back down. Immediate thread pickup. This is outstanding screw down crown execution. Very smooth. I like the friction of it because one can feel the O-rings. And to get 200 meters of water resistance at this price point, bearing in mind this is a daily wear piece, it's not a dive piece. 50 meters would be perfectly acceptable for a daily wear piece, but to get 200 meters from the screw down case back and the screw down crown is very strong specification. So I really like it. The screw down crown is an absolute pleasure to use, both manually winding and also screwing it back down. Quality control is very high. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €224 is strong money for a low tier piece, and even though it does have very strong specifications, C3 Super Lume Nova, clear AR coating and 200 meters, they're all strong specifications, screw down crown, screw down case back. I think that the price really needs to be reduced slightly in order to be more competitive. I think the correct price for this piece is circa €150. I think €224 is slightly high with an NH38. If it had a higher grade of movement, for example, if it had a PT5000, then yes, I would say the €224 would be justified. But €224 is pushing it for an NH38 powered piece. Now, of course, they can't use the PT5000 because it won't fit in a 36mm case. They are limited by the diameter of the case, the internals, and the NH38 does fit very well. So I can understand why they've elected to use the NH38 rather than the PT5000. If this were a 37mm or 39mm, then yes, they could fit a PT5000 in it. So that's something to consider. They've been forced really to use the NH38 due to the dimensions, and bear in mind this is a Rolex Bubbleback on Mars, so it really needs to be 36. If they made it 39 it wouldn't fit because the Bubbleback was a small case piece. So I'm going to declare the value as being okay. I think it's acceptable, but it could be the price reduced, and I think it could be better. The quality is excellent. It is 10 out of 10. Quality control builds quality, finishing throughout, specification are all outstanding. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Baltany Bubbleback reference S184029. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.